Battle of Cannae, 216 before Christ. This is not a story of glory. It is a lesson in carnage. It is the nightmare that defined Rome forever. The enemy was Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian. He was in Italy, loose, slaughtering our armies for years. The Senate, tired of guerrilla tactics, decided to crush him once and for all. We sent the largest army the Republic had ever seen. 80,000 men, double Hannibal's size, under the command of the consuls Varro and Aemilius Paulus. Varro's arrogance was our ruin. He saw Hannibal's smaller army and ordered a total, massive infantry charge right up the center. He wanted to break the enemy line with brute force, and Hannibal, the genius, was counting on it. He positioned his weakest infantry, the Gauls, in the center. He ordered them to retreat slowly under our charge. As our infantry advanced, confident, Hannibal's center bent inwards, like a bow. We were being drawn into a pocket. When our legions were fully committed, the trap closed. Hannibal's cavalry, superior to ours, destroyed our flanks and attacked our rear. His elite African infantry, which he had kept in reserve, marched in and closed the sides. We were surrounded, completely. What followed was not a battle. It was a massacre. 80,000 Romans, trapped in a killing field, shoulder to shoulder, with no room to even raise a gladius. The fight lasted for hours, until there was no one left to kill. The consul, Aemilius Paulus, died. Dozens of senators died. In one afternoon, Hannibal killed the backbone of a generation. Canny taught us that brute force is nothing without cunning. And it was a lesson we paid for with the blood of 80,000 men. Battle of Zama, 202 before Christ. Cannae almost destroyed us, but Rome survived and we learned. And the man who learned the lesson was Publius Cornelius Scipio. Scipio realized that Hannibal could not be beaten in Italy. So he did what Hannibal had done to us. He took the war to the enemy's home. He invaded Africa. Carthage, in a panic, called its greatest general back home. Hannibal, undefeated in Italy for 15 years, was forced to return to defend his own city. The two greatest generals of the war finally met at Zama. Hannibal had a larger army, including 80 war elephants, his terror weapon. He planned to use them to crush our lines the same way he always did. But Scipio was a student of war. He had a plan. He did not organize his legions in the standard checkerboard formation. He organized them in columns, with vast corridors between them, disguised by light troops. When Hannibal unleashed the elephants, Scipio gave the order. Our trumpeters sounded a deafening noise, and the light troops moved out of the corridors. The elephants, terrified by the noise and seeing the open paths, did what animals do. They ran down the path of least resistance. They passed straight through the corridors, harmless, and were killed in our rear. Hannibal's first weapon was neutralized. Then came the second part of Scipio's plan. Our cavalry, led by our new Numidian ally, Massinissa, crushed the Carthaginian cavalry, the same cavalry that beat us at Cannae. With the enemy cavalry off the field, the infantry battle began. It was brutal. At the crucial moment, our cavalry returned from the pursuit and hit the rear of Hannibal's infantry. It was Cannae, in reverse, Scipio's trap. Hannibal was defeated for the first and last time in his life. Carthage surrendered. The Second Punic War was over, not with a bang, but with Rome's revenge. We became the masters of the Mediterranean. Battle of Elysia, 52 Teotoburg, Adrianopolis, murdered before Christ. This battle was not won with the sword, it was won with the shovel. It was the engineering masterpiece of the most ambitious man who ever wore the purple, Julius Caesar. Caesar spent years in Gaul, playing tribe against tribe, until a Gallic chieftain, Vercingetorix, did the impossible. He united the Gallic people against us. After a brutal scorched earth campaign, Caesar finally cornered Vercingetorix and 80,000 of his warriors at Elysia, a hilltop fortress. Besieging him was the obvious answer, but Caesar knew that a Gallic relief army with hundreds of thousands of men was on its way to attack him from behind. A normal general would have retreated. Caesar was a madman or a genius, or both. He gave an order that no legionary had ever heard. He ordered the construction of 2 walls. First, we built an 18-kilometer siege wall around the hill, facing inward, to keep Vercingetorix trapped. It was a line full of towers, ditches, traps, and sharp stakes. Then, we turned around and built a second wall, 21 kilometers long, facing outward, to protect us from the approaching relief army. We were trapped in the middle, besieging and being besieged at the same time. When the Gallic relief army finally arrived, all hell broke loose. We fought on two fronts. While we repelled the frantic attacks from the relief army on the outside, Vercingetorix attacked our backs from the inside. It was absolute chaos, but the discipline of the legion and the strength of Roman engineering held. The relief army, a disorganized mob, broke against our outer defenses and dispersed. Vercingetorix, seeing his last hope disappear, surrendered. He rode out of Elysia, alone, and threw his weapons at Caesar's feet. Gaul was finished, and Caesar had a loyal army and a wealth that would make him the master of Rome. Battle of Pharsalus, 48 before Christ. This is the battle that disgusts me the most. There is no glory in Pharsalus. There is no foreign enemy, only Romans killing Romans for the ambition of two men. On one side, Pompey the Great, the champion of the Senate. He had twice Caesar's men, all the nobility of Rome, and the confidence that the gods were on his side. On the other, Julius Caesar, the renegade. He had his veteran legions from Gaul. Hardened men who were not loyal to the Republic, they were loyal to their general. The battle was fought in Greece. Pompey had a plan to use his superior cavalry, which was enormous, to crush Caesar's right flank, surround his infantry, and end the war. A solid plan. But Caesar knew Pompey. He knew the arrogance of the young nobles in the enemy cavalry. Caesar did something no one expected. He pulled his best cohorts from the third reserve line and created a fourth line, hidden behind his cavalry on the right flank. And he gave them a specific order. Do not throw your pila. Hold them as spears and aim for the face. Pompey's cavalry charged, proud and loud. Caesar's cavalry retreated, and Pompey's nobles fell right into the trap. Caesar's fourth line advanced. Imagine the shock. A wall of infantry spears, aiming for the horses' eyes and the riders' faces. The cavalry broke. They didn't just retreat. They panicked and fled the battlefield, abandoning their own infantry. With the flank exposed, Caesar unleashed his reserves. Pompey's infantry, made up of newer recruits, looked and saw the cavalry fleeing and Caesar's 10th Legion, the butchers of Gaul, advancing on them. Pompey's army crumbled. Pompey fled, went to Egypt, and lost his head. Caesar became the undisputed master of Rome. The Republic officially died there, in the dust of Pharsalus. Battle of Actium, 31. Before Christ. Caesar's death did not bring the Republic back. It only started a new round of civil wars. And this was the last one. On one side, Mark Antony, Caesar's best general, a veteran soldier, a lion, but he was old, and he was in love. He had the support of Queen Cleopatra and all the wealth of Egypt. On the other side, Caesar's great nephew, Octavian, a frail young man, a cunning politician, a terrible general, but a genius at picking the right men. His right arm was Marcus Agrippa, one of the greatest admirals in history. The battle that decided the fate of the world was not fought on land. It was on the water, off the coast of Greece. Antony and Cleopatra had larger ships, enormous quinqueremes, floating fortresses full of catapults. They were powerful, but slow, heavy. Agrippa, commanding Octavian's fleet, had smaller ships. Liburnians, fast, agile, with well-trained crews. And they had a new weapon, the harpax, a catapult-fired grappling hook that latched onto the enemy hull, allowing it to be pulled in and boarded. The battle was a chaos of splintered wood. Antony's fortresses couldn't turn fast enough to catch Agrippa's nimble ships. The Liburnians danced around them, attacking in packs, breaking their oars, shooting fire, and boarding. In the midst of the confusion, Cleopatra saw an opening and made her decision. She hoisted her sails and fled with her squadron of 60 ships, taking the treasury of Egypt with her. Antony, seeing his queen flee, made the final mistake of a soldier. He abandoned his men. He abandoned his army, which was dying for him, and followed her. For the fleet left behind, it was the end. Leaderless, surrounded, they surrendered. The war was over. Antony and Cleopatra killed themselves in Egypt. Octavian was left alone, the undisputed master of the world, And to ensure this would never happen again, he changed his name to Augustus, the first emperor. Battle of the Teotoburg Forest, 9 after Christ. This was the battle that taught us to fear the forest. It was arrogance paid for in blood. Augustus was emperor. The world was at peace. We had conquered Germania as far as the Elbe, and the governor, Quintilius Varus, thought the job was finished. He treated the Germans like cattle, not as warriors. His friend and closest advisor was Arminius, a Germanic prince. But Arminius was not just any barbarian. He was a Roman citizen, an officer in our army. He trained with our legions, learned our language, our tactics, our discipline. And, deep down, he hated us. He knew our greatest weakness, arrogance. Arminius planned the trap perfectly. He reported a small false rebellion and convinced Varus to take a detour with 3 entire legions, the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th, through a dense, dark forest we did not know. It was a slaughterhouse. As soon as the 20-kilometer marching column was trapped in the swampy terrain under a torrential rain, Arminius's men attacked. From all sides. It was not a battle. It was a massacre that lasted 3 days. Our formations were useless in the mud. The men couldn't form a shield line. The barbarians hunted us from above, from the trees. 20,000 legionaries, slaughtered like animals. Varus killed himself. The 3 sacred eagles of the legions were captured. They say that Emperor Augustus, in Rome, would wander the palace, banging his head against the walls and screaming, "Varus, give me back my legions!" We never recovered those eagles, and we never again made a serious attempt to conquer Germania. The Rhine became the frontier, a permanent scar on the map, all because of a traitor we had trained ourselves. Battle of the Milvian Bridge, 312 after Christ. 300 years after the betrayal in Germania, the empire was once again in civil war. Diocletian's machine, the Tetrarchy, had broken. 4 men were fighting for power. This battle was the end of that fight. On one side, Maxentius, who controlled Rome, a tyrant who trusted in the old gods and the city walls. On the other, Constantine, a brutal general from the frontier of Britannia, with an army of hardened veterans. The legend, of course, is what everyone remembers, the story that Constantine told afterward. That on the night before the battle, he looked to the sky and saw a sign, the Chi Rho, the symbol of the Christian God. And he heard a voice, "In hoc signo vinces." In this sign, you will conquer. A divine vision, or the best war propaganda in history? To a soldier, it doesn't matter. He gave his men a new symbol, a new faith to fight for. The battle itself was a tactical trap. Maxentius made the stupid mistake of leaving the safe walls of Rome. He formed his army with the Tiber River directly behind him, with only the narrow Milvian Bridge as an escape route. A first-year general wouldn't make that mistake. Constantine's superior cavalry broke Maxentius's flank and pushed him back. Maxentius's infantry, mostly composed of spoiled praetorians who hadn't fought a real battle in decades, broke. The panic began. The entire army of Maxentius tried to flee, all at once, over the same narrow bridge. It was a massacre. Men trampled, drowned in the river by the weight of their own armor. Maxentius, the champion of the old gods, was one of them. He drowned in the mud of the Tiber. Constantine entered Rome as the sole master of the West, and the God who gave him the victory, the God of the Christians, marched with him. The empire would never be the same. Battle of Adrianopolis, 378 after Christ. This was the battle that proved the legionary, the king of the battlefield for 500 years, was obsolete. It was where heavy infantry met its predator, heavy cavalry. The enemy was the Goths, not a small tribe, but an entire people. Fleeing the Huns, they were given permission to settle inside our borders as allies, but our corrupt bureaucrats treated them like dogs. They stole their rations, took their children as slaves. A hungry and desperate people is a dangerous people. They rebelled. The emperor of the East, Valens, decided to crush them personally. He was an arrogant man, so eager for glory that he didn't even wait for reinforcements from the Western emperor. He marched his legions in the middle of summer, under a brutal sun, and met the Goths near Adrianopolis. It was a tactical disaster from start to finish. Our men were exhausted from the heat and the forced march. The battle began in a disorganized fashion, but the fatal blow came from where we didn't expect it. The heavy cavalry of the Goths, which had been away from the camp foraging, returned in the middle of the battle. They hit our exposed left flank like an iron hammer. Our lighter cavalry evaporated. The Goths then turned and attacked the rear of our legions. It was Cannae all over again. Our infantry, surrounded, exhausted by the heat, was squeezed and slaughtered. 2/3 of the Eastern Roman army died on that field. And, in the midst of the massacre, Emperor Valens himself. Some say he was killed by an arrow. Others, that he was burned alive in a farmhouse where he tried to hide. It didn't matter. The emperor was dead, the army destroyed. Adrianople proved that Rome was no longer invincible. And it sent a message to all the barbarians on our borders. The door was open. The sack of Rome, 410 after Christ. Adrianople was the wound. The sack of Rome was the death. Not a military death, but a psychological one. The man who did it was Alaric, king of the Visigoths. And here is the irony that every soldier understands. Alaric was not a savage barbarian. He was a Roman master of soldiers. A general in our own army. He spent his life fighting for us under the promise of land and titles. Rome betrayed him. The bureaucrats of Honorius, the pathetic emperor who hid in Ravenna, tricked and humiliated him. So, Alaric did what a betrayed general does. He marched on his former masters. He didn't want to destroy Rome. He wanted to get paid. He wanted to be a respected citizen. He besieged the city. The Senate, in a panic, tried to negotiate. But Honorius, safe in his swamp fortress, refused any deal. He preferred to let his capital die than to negotiate with a barbarian. In 410, the gates were opened. Whether by starvation or by the betrayal of slaves inside, it doesn't matter. For the first time in 800 years, since the Gauls of Brennus, the eternal city, the mistress of the world, was at the feet of an invading army. The sack lasted 3 days. It wasn't as brutal as what we did in Carthage or Corinth, but it was the symbol. Temples were emptied, palaces were burned, the pride of an empire was dragged through the mud. When the news spread, the world stopped breathing. The empire did not fall that day, but the idea of Rome, the idea that she was invincible and eternal, died. And when an empire loses its soul, the body is the next to fall. Jupiter, the emperor of the gods. This is the commander-in-chief, the emperor of the celestial court. For a soldier, Jupiter is not some old bearded man in the clouds.